Hey y'all, Jamie here, and today we're going into a new series called The World's Richest Shipwrecks, a wreck diver's guide to gold and silver treasures of the seas by Robert F. Marx and Jenifer Marx. And we'll start with the introduction to New World Shipwrecks, okay? And I got my pirate bottle right here that I got from Dennis, D. Spud, and Adventure and Glass. So that's my pirate bottle. All right. Until Columbus's 1492 voyage to the New World, the economies of the European nations were stagnant due to a severe lack of precious metals, which were critical for expanding mercantile trade. It was the search for gold that led to the discovery of the New World. Columbus had read of Marco Polo's 13th century travels, in which he described a land called Zipango, Japan, so filled with gold that even the roof tiles were made of it. Columbus was convinced that by sailing westward from Europe, he would reach Zipango and satisfy Europe's hunger for gold and silver. As it turned out, treasure was obtained not from Zipango, but from the mines of Mexico and South America. During the colonial period, about 90% of the precious metals mined in the entire world came from the New World. The Spaniards mined over 500,000 ounces of gold and more than 5 billion ounces of silver. This was the official tally, but these figures may well be doubled if we take into account the amount of unregistered gold and silver that was mined. Some was smuggled back to Spain and some used in the New World to purchase contraband goods from other European nations, which undersold the merchants in Seville, who had a monopoly on trade with the New World colonists. The importance of the New World treasure to Spain is evidenced in the following dispatch sent to the Doge by the Venetian ambassador to Spain in September 1567. At the time of my last letter to you, I wrote that there was great anxiety all over Spain over the delay of the arrival of the annual treasure fleets, which the Genoese bankers informed the king that unless the fleets reached port shortly, they would be unable to negotiate further loans for him. Philip II fell into such a state of shock that he had to be confined to the bed by his physicians. The king then ordered that some 10,000 pesos, which was about all the money remaining in the royal coffers, to be used in various churches for the saying of masses for the safe arrival of the fleets. I am happy to inform you that the fleets have made port safely, and there is now great rejoicing, not only in the royal court, but throughout the land. New World treasure was critical to other nations of Europe as well, since it was furnished nearly 95% of the precious metals on which their monetary systems were based. There is a popular misconception that only Spain benefited from, when in fact she benefited less than the rest of Europe. The reason is there was virtually no industry of any kind in Spain, which was totally dependent on other nations for manufactured goods, for the export to the New World, and for domestic consumption. Therefore, nearly all the New World treasure was used to pay for goods from other nations, which used much of the silver and gold in expanding trade with the Orient. During the first a few decades of Spanish rule in the New World, the conquistadors obtained more of their treasure by plundering temples where generations worth of treasure and tribute were stored. When they exhausted this source, they enslaved the Armenians and forced them to work the mines that they had been digging in for centuries, and set them to panning for gold in riverbeds. The Amerindians, American Indians, it's just mashed together, the word is. In 1545, about the time these two sources began to run out, a breakthrough occurred in Peru with the discovery of the prestigious silver mountain of Potsi, today located in Bulgaria. 3 years later, other rich silver and gold mines were discovered in Chile, Ecuador, Colombia, Guatemala, and Mexico. Another boost in the amount of precious metals reaching Spain came in 1555, when a German alchemist introduced the use of quicksilver, mercury, in refining precious metals. This process, first used by the Phoenicians around 1000 BC, fell out of use during the European so-called Dark Ages, when little precious metal was mined. The Spaniards discovered the Huanconvalencia mercury mine in Peru. I've got it spaced out where I could say it. Huanconvalencia. Huancavellica. It's a mercury mine in Peru that supplied all the mercury needed by the South American mines. Mercury for refining in Mexico came chiefly from Hungary, with some coming from the Almedian mine in southern Spain, first used by the Romans. For over 3 centuries, lumbering galleons plied the route between Spain and the New World. The precious cargo they carried were the lifeblood of Spain and affected the economies of most of Europe. American gold caused such an increase in gold supplies that the metal depreciated, sparkling horrendous inflation all over Europe. As early as 1503, commerce with Spain's American colonies were strictly organized. The merchants of Seville enjoyed a virtual monopoly. A royal order created the House of Trade to control all aspects of commerce and colonization in the Americas, and hundreds of ships began sailing between Spain and the New World on a scheduled basis. The vessels leaving Seville carried a broad array of items for Spanish colonies because colonists were forbidden to manufacture anything at all. They were even forbidden to produce wine or olive oil, the 2 staples of the Spanish diet. Spain herself manufactured very little, so the ships were laden with goods from almost every nation in Europe. Tools and weapons, cooking utensils, glassware and ceramics, cutlery, cloth and trimmings, hats, shoes, religious objects, furniture, window glass, and even dressed stone and bricks for buildings. On the return voyage, in addition to gold and silver, spice and bullion, which was the main cargo in value, the galleons carried chests of pearls, emeralds, and other gemstones, and agricultural products such as sugar, tobacco, and dye stuff. These are some pictures of there's a map and diving in there. It says the top, the map, is the Bahama Channel. It's also called the Gulf of Florida. The islands of Cape Canaveral, which no longer exist. And the lower image is wooden remains of a 7th century Byzantine merchant ship located off of Akko, Israel. 2 meters of sand was removed, which concealed the wreck when first found. And there's the pictures. Right there. And okay. After 1565, when the Manila galleons began making the perilous voyage between the Philippines and Acapulco on the west coast of Mexico, exotic products from the Far East were added to the shipments destined for Seville. Oriental goods were unloaded at Acapulco and carried by pack animals across the mountains to the port of Veracruz on the Gulf of Mexico, where they were put aboard the transatlantic galleons. During the first half of the 16th century, Spanish ships made transatlantic voyages alone or in small convoys. A dramatic increase in attacks by pirates and privateers from the nations that had been excluded from the Treaty of the Tordesillas in 1495 led to the establishment of a new convoy system. Starting in 1552, 3 separate fleets sailed each year. The New Spain or Mexican fleet called first at Veracruz to load treasure and exotic Oriental goods, and then headed for Havana. The Terra Firma fleet picked up gold and emeralds from the Colombian mines at Cartagena and then went on to Panama. A great mercantile fair was held in Panama, either in Noviembre de Dios or Port Bello. The treasures from Peru, Chile, and Ecuador, consisting chiefly of gold and silver, spice, and bullion, were brought to Panama City on the Pacific side of Panama, and then transported across the isthmus by mule to the fair to await the arrival of the Third Fleet, which was called the Armada of Terra Firma, or the galleons. After all of the treasures were embarked on by the galleons, both fleets sailed together to Havana to join the New Spain fleet and sail for Spain. The combined homeward fleet, which at times numbered over 250 ships, must have been a stirring sight as it headed up the Straits of Florida. Okay, here is, I guess this is the Robert Marx, and he's holding gold coins he found with his sea hunter off Cuba. Right there. Okay. Throughout the colonial period, many ships known as registers sailed alone or in small groups from Spain to the New World and back again, lacking the protection of the large fleets. They were preyed on by pirates and privateers. However, they offered the advantage of carrying contraband treasure and offloading it either off the southern coast of Portugal or at small Spanish ports to evade customs officials. Each year, some 6 to 10 averos, or mail boats, were sailed between Spain and the New World. Although officially forbidden to carry any treasure on the return voyage, as a rule, they carried large amounts of unregistered treasure. And here's an early 18th century Spanish galleon under sail. Early in the 16th century, the Spanish established pearl fisheries on the islands of Cobawa and Margarita off the northern coast of Venezuela. The supply of indigenous Carib divers, C-A-R-I-B, I guess must be Caribbean, short for Caribbean, I don't know. Divers was soon exhausted. Many died from European diseases. Others died from overwork at the hands of their greedy employers, who forced them to dive as many as 16 hours a day. The next source of divers were enslaved Luscano Indians, Lucaian, Luscano Indians, from the Bahamas. The Spanish historian Oviedo, O-V-I-E-D-O. I'm sorry if I'm not saying these words right. I got them spaced out, so maybe I can say them right. Writing in 1535, gave an account of a visit to the pearl fisheries of Margarita, where he observed the divers, who were considered the best divers in the New World. Okay, these are bronze cannons from a late 16th century Spanish galleon recovered by Marx in 1962 and currently on display in the Azores Islands Museum. Azores Islands Museum, right there. I wish these were in color, but they're not in color. But those are bronze canyons. All right. Okay, he marveled at their ability, noting that they were able to descend to depths of 100 feet, 30 meters, and remain submerged as long as 5 minutes. They had more stamina than the Caribs and could dive from sunrise to sunset 7 days a week without appearing to tire, as old world divers had done for millennia. They descended by grasping stone weights in their arms. They dove naked except for a net bag around their necks in which they deposited oysters they found on the bottom. So great was the demand for the Luscanian divers in the pearl fisheries that in only a few decades the Bahamas were bereft of their former inhabitants. The first natives seen by Columbus on his epic voyage of discovery, Negroes from Africa, replaced them as divers. The Spaniards also used divers in salvage work. Every year from 1503 onward, ships from Spain carried supplies across the Atlantic to sustain its new settlements in the New World. On the return voyages, these ships carried the treasures and products of the colonies back to the mother country. Because of frequent storms and careless navigation, many ships were lost at sea. In major colonial ports like Havana, Veracruz, Cartagena, and Panama, teams of native divers and subsequently African slaves were kept aboard salvaged vessels that were ready to depart on short notice to attempt recovery of sunken treasure. Contrary to popular belief, contemporary divers were able to recover over 90% of the treasures lost on the Spanish ships in the New World, from the 16th century to the end of the 18th century. Divers recovered more than 100 million pesos. That is $1,250,000,000 in modern currency. From Spanish wrecks. On more than one occasion, they saved the Spanish crown from bankruptcy. All right, the next chapter will be Canada's Richest Shipwrecks. So that was the introduction chapter. And then it starts with Canada and then goes to Americas. So we'll do Canada's next. All right, hope you enjoyed. See you back soon.